Okay, so picture this. It was a Tuesday, a regular Tuesday, and I was sitting at the kitchen table. My wife Sarah was practically vibrating with excitement. Her three best friends, Brenda, Lisa, and Chloe, were huddled around her, giggling like schoolgirls. The air was thick with the smell of fruity cocktails they'd mixed, and the faint, sweet scent of sunscreen. That should have been my first clue, right? Sunscreen in the middle of winter in our chilly kitchen. They were deep in planning mode for what Sarah called the ultimate girls' trip. For months, that's all I'd heard about. Ultimate girls' trip. Like it was some sacred pilgrimage only she and her chosen few could embark on. And guess whose dying this ultimate pilgrimage was going to be on? Mine. Always mine. They were talking about infinity pools, cabana boys, and those little umbrellas and drinks. Hawaii, they'd decided. Maui specifically. 8 nights, 5-star resort, spa treatments, shopping sprees, dinners where the menu was probably just the price list, and every single expense, from the first-class tickets to the last designer handbag purchase, was going to land squarely on my credit card. I work a lot. I am an accountant, not some high-flying CEO. My days are spreadsheets, numbers, budgets, and the crushing weight of other people's financial mistakes. My office isn't a tropical paradise. It's a cubicle farm, with fluorescent lights that hum like angry bees and a coffee machine that tastes like burnt plastic. I spend 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, making sure other people's money is in order, while my own savings account felt like it was constantly bleeding out. For Sarah. For Sarah's friends. I'd tried to talk to her. I really had. I'd said, "Honey, maybe Hawaii is a bit much right now. We just paid for the kitchen renovation and remember that new car loan." She just waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, Tom, don't be such a spoilsport. It's just this once. I deserve it. We all deserve it. It's been such a stressful year." Stressful for whom? I thought. My stress meter was practically redlining, but apparently my stress didn't count. My work, my effort, my money, it was all just a bottomless well for her desires. The Hawaii trip was the final straw. It wasn't just the money, though that was a huge part. It was the complete lack of regard for me, for our shared future, for the effort I poured into our life. It was the way she and her friends acted, like I was an ATM with legs, just there to fund their lavish fantasies. They didn't even ask if I could afford it. They just assumed I would, and I always had. Until now. I stood there watching that. Sarah was showing off pictures of some resort online, practically drooling over the beachfront villas. Brenda was already planning her outfits. Lisa was looking up excursions, deep-sea fishing, helicopter tours, probably private yacht charters. Chloe was just nodding along, looking starry-eyed. Not one of them looked at me. Not one of them asked how my day was, or if I was okay, or if I needed anything. I was just the provider, the background noise. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. Something snapped inside me. I'd been pushed too far, taken for granted too long. And I decided right then and there that this ultimate girls' trip wasn't going to Hawaii. Not on my watch. I'd been planning my own kind of surprise. Not for them, but for Sarah. A lesson, perhaps. A wake-up call. I'd spent weeks working on it secretly. Canceling the original flights, getting refunds. Some of them were non-refundable, of course, adding to my quiet fury. Booking new ones. Not exactly flights, actually. More like bus tickets. And a hotel. A very specific hotel the day came. They were all packed. Suitcases, overflowing with designer swimsuits and flimsy dresses. Sarah was practically glowing, bouncing on her toe. "Okay, Tom, where are the tickets?" Are you finally going to tell me what the big surprise is? She shrieked, playfully swatting my arm. Her friends were just as excited, leaning in, eyes wide. They thought I was taking them somewhere even more extravagant. Bless their naive hearts, I smiled. A slow, quiet smile that didn't reach my eyes. Yup, I said, pulling an envelope from my jacket pocket. Here they are, sweetheart. Your tickets to paradise. Sarah snatched the envelope, tearing it open with trembling hands. Brenda, Lisa, and Chloe crowded around, craning their necks to see. Sarah pulled out a stack of paper. Her bright smile faltered. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. Her face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving them ashen. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me, her eyes wide, uncomprehending. What is this, Tom? She whispered, her voice barely a breath. I leaned in close, still holding that strange, calm smile. It's your trip, darling, I said, my voice low and even. Your ultimate girls' trip to my office. For 8 full days. You want to know what my life is like? Now you'll know. Surprise, honey. Welcome to Scranton. The silence that followed was deafening. It hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, thick with the scent of tropical dreams that had just gone up in smoke. Their mouths hung open, their eyes wide with horror. Sarah just stared at me, holding the bus tickets and the reservation for a rundown motel near my accounting firm. This wasn't paradise. This was my hell. And now, for the next 8 days, it would be hers too. The silence lasted for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds. Then Brenda, who always had a flair for the dramatic, let out a high-pitched gasp. Lisa clutched Chloe's arm, her eyes darting between the papers in Sarah's hand and my stone-cold face. Sarah herself looked like she'd been hit by a truck, her face contorted, first with disbelief, then with a slow creeping horror, and finally with pure, unadulterated rage. Tom, what the hell is this? She shrieked, crumpling the tickets in her hand. Her voice cracked. This isn't funny. This isn't Maui. This is Scranton. She spat the name like it was poison. I didn't flinch. That's right, sweetheart, I said, my voice still calm, almost unnervingly so. My office is in Scranton. You're going to spend 8 days there. See what I do, where I work, how I earn the money that pays for all your ultimate trips. You are insane. Brenda wailed, stepping back. You can't be serious. This is cruel's. Cruel? I finally raised my voice just a little. What's cruel, Brenda? Is planning a $10,000 vacation on a credit card that's already maxed out, without a single thought for the person who has to pay for it. What's cruel is spending years being completely oblivious to the sacrifices I make, the stress I carry, the fact that I am drowning financially just to keep up with your lifestyle and your friends' expectations. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes blazing. This is our trip, Tom, my trip. You promised, you paid for it. I paid for it indeed, I said, looking her dead in the eye. And because I paid for it, I got to choose the destination, and I chose my destination. It's an immersive experience. You want to know what my daily life is like? Well, now you get to live it. He's gaslighting you, Sarah, Chloe piped up, her voice trembling. This is abusive. You can't let him do this. I turned my gaze to Chloe. Abusive? For showing my wife what my actual life is like. What's abusive is expecting me to work myself into an early grave, so you four can sip margaritas by an infinity pool. What's abusive is the constant financial drain, the endless demands, the total lack of appreciation for anything I do. Sarah was trembling now, tears welling in her eyes. But it was still anger, not sorrow. You did this on purpose. You deliberately ruined my trip. Our trip. Your trip, Sarah. Always your trip, I stated. And yes, I did it on purpose. Because nothing else was getting through to you. I tried talking. I tried explaining our financial situation. I tried asking for a little consideration. You ignored me every single time. You brushed me off like I was an annoying fly. This was my last resort. You wanted a surprise trip? You got one. Lisa, who had been quiet, finally spoke up, her voice a little softer. Tom, we were really looking forward to it. It's been a tough year for all of us. We just wanted a break. A break, I scoffed. I haven't had a real break in years. My breaks are an hour of television before I fall asleep, exhausted. My breaks are working overtime on weekends to pay for all these breaks you all need. I jostled vaguely around the room. Look around. Does this house look like it's struggling? No, because I make sure it's perfect. Does Sarah look like she's wanting for anything? No, because I make sure she has everything she wants. And what do I get in return? Silence, indifference, and endless demands. Sarah threw the crumpled papers at me. They fluttered uselessly to the floor. I hate you, she screamed, her voice raw. I hate you for this. You are the most selfish, mean-spirited man I have ever met. How could you do this to me? Selfish. I let out a bitter laugh. That's rich, Sarah. Really rich coming from you. I am leaving, she declared, grabbing her small carry-on bag, the one she'd planned to take as her personal item on the flight to Maui. I am not staying here. I am not going to your miserable office. This marriage is over. I can't believe I married such a monster. Brenda and Chloe immediately rushed to her side, murmuring comforting words. That's right, Sarah. Don't let him control you. He's a nightmare. Lisa hesitated for a moment, looking at me, a flicker of something in her eyes. I couldn't quite place, perhaps a tiny spark of understanding, or maybe just. But then she quickly joined the others, forming a protective huddle around Sarah. Go ahead, I said, my voice losing its calm edge, replaced by a weary resignation. Leave, go wherever you want. Just remember who paid for everything until now. You want to leave? Fine, but don't expect a dime from me anymore. You'll have to find your own source of income for your next ultimate trip. Sarah sobbed, pressing her face into Brenda's shoulder. He's bluffing. He's trying to scare me. I am not bluffing, Sarah, I said, looking away, feeling the heavy weight of my decision settle in my chest. It felt like I was tearing my own heart out. But I knew I had to. This had to stop. This is it. You either go to Scranton or you go somewhere else. But you go on your own terms from now on. She pulled away from her friends, her eyes red-rimmed. I am not going to your pathetic office. I am not. And I am not staying with you. Then I guess that's your choice, I said, turning and walking away, leaving them standing there in the living room, surrounded by tropical suitcases and shattered dreams. I walked into the kitchen, picked up the travel brochure for Maui she'd left on the counter, and calmly, deliberately, ripped it in half. The sound was like a final curtain falling. The ultimate girl's trip to paradise was officially cancelled. And so, it seemed, was my marriage. They say a man reaching his breaking point is a quiet thing, a slow burn, not an explosion. For me, it had been burning for years. It wasn't just the Maui trip, not by a long shot. That was just the spark that finally ignited the forest fire. Sarah and I met in college. She was bright, bubbly, full of life. I was the quiet, studious one. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. I was drawn to her vivacity, her ability to light up a room, She said she liked my stability, my grounded nature. We fell in love, got married a few years after graduation. It was a simple wedding, just family and close friends. Talked about building a life together, saving for a house, starting a family. All the usual dreams. But somewhere along the way, things started to shift. Subtly at first, then more overtly. I got my accounting job, steady and reliable if not thrilling. Sarah pursued her passion for event planning, which was glamorous but not always lucrative. That was fine. I didn't mind being the primary earner for a while. I thought it was temporary, a phase, but the spending started. Small things at first. A new dress, a fancy dinner. Then it escalated. Designer bags, shoes, spa days every week. Her friends, Brenda, Lisa, and Chloe, were all on similar wavelengths. They loved their high-end shopping trips, their expensive brunches, their weekends away. And Sarah, my Sarah, always had to keep up. Or rather, I had to keep up for her. I'd come home from a long day at the office, feeling the weight of spreadsheets and deadlines, and she'd be excited about a new purchase. Look, Tom, I got this incredible new jacket. It was on sale. Sale, meaning still hundreds of dollars I hadn't budgeted for. When I tried to gently point out our budget, she'd get defensive. Oh, it's just a little thing. You work so hard, we deserve to enjoy our money. Enjoy my money was what she really meant. Then came the home decor. The kitchen renovation she absolutely had to have. The landscaping that cost more than my car. She had exquisite taste, I'll give her that. Our house was beautiful, but it was beautiful at a cost I bore almost entirely. Every time I tried to discuss our shared finances, she'd glaze over, change the subject, or accuse me of being cheap. Tom, stop being such a worrywart. Money comes and goes. We'll be fine. But money wasn't coming and going. It was mostly just going. And the friends, oh, the friends. Brenda, who was constantly between jobs and expected Sarah to pay for everything. Lisa, who came from money but liked to show off and encourage Sarah's spending. Chloe, who was just a sycophant, agreeing with whatever Sarah said. They formed this impenetrable circle. When they were together, it was like I ceased to exist. Their conversations revolved around fashion, gossip, and planning their next expensive outing. When I tried to interject, to share something about my day, they'd just politely nod and then turn back to their important discussion about the merits of different types of designer handbags. I felt like a ghost in my own home, a walking wallet. My needs, my feelings, my exhaustion, they were all invisible. I tried to schedule date nights, just us. But something always came up. Brenda needed a ride somewhere. Lisa had tickets to a concert she couldn't miss. Chloe needed emotional support. Sarah would apologize, but the pattern never broke. Her friends always came first. Their whims were more important than my quiet desire for connection. I tried to talk to her about having kids. I always wanted a family. She'd say, "Oh, Tom, not yet. I am still enjoying my freedom. And besides, babies are so expensive. We need to save more first." Which was ironic considering how much she was spending. And so the years slipped by, and my dream of a family faded into a distant echo. The stress piled up. I started having trouble sleeping. My hair started thinning. I was always tired, always worried. I felt like I was constantly running on a treadmill, just trying to keep up with the ever-increasing cost of our life. A life that seemed to be entirely for Sarah and her friends. I went to work, I came home, I paid bills, and I watched her live a life of leisure and luxury that I funded but never got to enjoy. I saw the Maui trip come up, and I tried to be reasonable. I showed her our bank statements. I pointed out the credit card debt. I practically begged her to reconsider. She just laughed. "Oh, you are such a worrywart, Tom. We'll figure it out. It's just this once. It's for my mental health." "Mental health," she said, while mine was clearly crumbling. That was the moment I realized that talking was useless. Explaining was useless. Begging was useless. She wasn't listening. She hadn't listened in years. I had to do something drastic. Something that would force her to see my reality, even if just for a moment. It would be painful for both of us. It would likely break us. But I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't be just the means to her endless ends. I had to be seen. I had to be heard. Or I had to walk away utterly broken. So I cancelled the tickets. It hurt, because some of it was non-refundable, and that money was just gone. But the principle mattered more. I booked the bus tickets to Scranton, and a modest motel room near my office building. I knew it was extreme. I knew she would be furious. I knew my marriage might not survive it. But I was so tired of being invisible. I was so tired of watching my life slip away, unnoticed and unappreciated. I had to make a stand. I had to scream. Even if the scream was just a quiet, calculated act of defiance. The surprise was not just about the destination. It was about me finally taking control, finally saying, "No more." After Sarah's furious outburst, the living room went quiet again. But this time it was an uncomfortable silence, thick with accusation and raw emotion. I had retreated to the kitchen, ripping the Maui brochure, and now I could hear muffled whispers from the living room. Sarah was sobbing dramatically, punctuated by Brenda and Chloe's fervent declarations of how I was a monster, and how Sarah deserved better. Lisa was still a little quieter, her voice less outraged, more hesitant. I just started making coffee, slowly, deliberately. My hands were shaking a little, but my resolve was firm. This was it. The point of no return. A few minutes later, I heard Sarah's voice, a little clearer now, though still tearful. "I am not going, guys. I am not going to his stupid office. I am not spending 8 days in Scranton. This is insane." Brenda's voice, sharp and practical, cut through. "Of course not, Sarah. You absolutely shouldn't. We should just go somewhere else. Let's go to Miami or a spa weekend here. We can still salvage this." Then came the awkward pause. I imagined them looking at each other. Who would pay for Miami? Who would pay for the spa weekend? Certainly not Brenda, or Lisa, or Chloe. Their trips were always funded by someone else's generosity. In this case, mine. And now that their ATM was broken, their enthusiasm for alternative plans seemed to wane. Lisa's voice, carefully neutral, floated in. "Well, I mean, flights are so expensive last minute. And hotels. We'd have to really scramble. Maybe it's not the best idea right now." Chloe, ever the follower, chimed in, a little less enthusiastically than before. "Yeah, I mean, my budget is pretty tight. I really can't afford anything right now." Brenda, who had been the most vocal in her outrage, suddenly sounded a bit deflated. "Oh, right. Yeah, I guess it's tricky, isn't it?" Sarah's voice was a choked sob. "So, what, you are just going to abandon me? After all this?" There was more whispering, more awkward silence. Then Brenda's voice again, this time with a note of self-preservation. No, Sarah, of course not. But Tom's being, well, he's being impossible. Maybe it's best we just regroup. You two need to sort this out. This is a big marital issue. We don't want to get in the middle of it." That was it. The ultimate escape hatch for her so-called friends. They wanted the good times, the freebies, the glamour. But the moment there was drama, the moment they had to actually contribute or deal with an uncomfortable situation, They vanished like smoke. They weren't friends. They were vultures circling a meal ticket. I heard the rustle of bags, the quiet clicking of heels on the floor. "We'll call you later, Sarah. Just get through this, okay? We're here for you in spirit." Brenda's voice already fading as they headed for the door. A moment later, the front door clicked shut. Sarah was left alone. Just her and her shattered dreams of Maui, and me in the kitchen silently sipping my coffee. The house was eerily quiet. Too quiet. I heard her sniffle, then a low, mournful wail. She was devastated and alone. Part of me, the part that still loved her, the part that remembered the girl I married, felt a pang of guilt. Was this too much? Had I gone too far? But then I remembered the years of neglect, the ignored pleas, the financial strain, the feeling of being used. Number. This was necessary. She needed to feel the consequences of her choices, the emptiness of a life built on borrowed happiness and unearned luxury. I heard her walk into the bedroom, the muffled sounds of her crying into a pillow. I didn't go to her. I couldn't. I had work. I had to go to my actual office in Scranton and earn the money she so easily spent. I finished my coffee, got my briefcase, and headed for the door. I paused at the bedroom door. Sarah was curled up on the bed, her face buried in the pillow, her body shaking with sobs. She looked so small, so broken. But this brokenness was her own making, aided by my enabler hands. "I am going to work, Sarah," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "The bus for Scranton leaves at 8. Your ticket is on the kitchen table." She didn't respond. Just a fresh wave of muffled sobs. I left. The drive to the bus station felt strange. It was a cold, gray morning, fitting for the somber mood. I got on the bus, found my seat, and watched the city lights fade as we headed out of town. My destination was my office, my daily grind. I knew what to expect. But what about Sarah? Would she really come? Or would she just stay home, alone in our beautiful, expensive house with her broken dreams and fair weather friends? The uncertainty gnawed at me. My intention was not just to punish her, but to force a reckoning. To make her see. But what if she refused to look? What if this was just the bitter end? I worked through the day, going through the motions, but my mind kept drifting back to her. What was she doing? Was she still crying? Was she making plans to leave me? The questions swirled. I didn't get any calls or text from her. Nothing. The silence was louder than any argument. That evening I got off the bus, walked a familiar route home. The house was dark. My heart sank. She wasn't there. She had left. This was it, the final, heartbreaking consequence of my desperate act. I opened the door, stepped inside. The air was cold still. Then from the living room I saw a shape. Curled up on the couch, still in her day clothes with a blanket pulled over her, was Sarah. She was asleep. On the coffee table, neatly folded, were the bus tickets to Scranton. She hadn't gone, but she hadn't left me either. Not yet. She was still here, albeit a shell of her former excited self. The trip had been ruined. The friends had bailed. And now she was faced with her own reality, stripped bare. The real trip, the inner trip, had just begun. And I wondered, with a knot of anxiety and a flicker of hope, if she was finally ready to embark on it. The next morning was even stranger. I woke up, and Sarah was still on the couch, wrapped in the blanket, looking small and vulnerable. Her face was puffy from crying, her hair a mess. She looked nothing like the vibrant, glowing woman who had been planning her Maui getaway just 2 days before. I made coffee, the smell slowly filling the quiet house. I expected her to lash out, to resume the fight from where we'd left off, but she didn't. She just stirred, then slowly sat up, rubbing her eyes. She looked at me, not with anger, but with a vacant, lost expression. "Are you going to work?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Yes," I replied, my voice neutral. "Same as every day." She nodded slowly. "Right." She paused, then took a deep breath. "The bus leaves at 8, right?" My heart gave a little jolt. "Yes," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "The tickets are on the table." She pushed the blanket aside, stood up. She walked to the kitchen table, picked up the bus tickets. Her gaze lingered on them for a long moment. She didn't say anything else. She just walked slowly to the bedroom. I left for the bus, my stomach churning with a mix of dread and anticipation. I didn't know if she would actually show up. I wanted her to, desperate. Not to gloat, but because I truly believed she needed to see my life, to understand the world I inhabited for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, the world that allowed her to live hers. I got to the office. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar, irritating tune. The coffee machine sputtered. My cubicle felt like a small gray box. I opened my computer, started on a new spreadsheet, trying to focus. But every time the elevator dinged, I looked up. Every time someone walked past my cubicle, I glanced over. Around 10 o'clock, I heard a different kind of murmur, a slight shift in the office atmosphere. I looked up, and there she was, Sarah. She was standing awkwardly by the reception desk, clutching her purse. She was wearing a nice dress, the kind she usually wore to lunch with her friends, not to an office building. Her hair was still a bit messy, her eyes still a little red. But she was here. She actually came. My co-worker Carol, a sweet woman in her 50s, was talking to her, pointing in my direction. Sarah's eyes found mine. Her expression was unreadable. Not angry anymore, not sad, just blank. She started walking towards my cubicle. Slowly, tentatively, like she was walking into a foreign country. My heart pounded. What would she do? Would she scream at me again? Make a scene? She stopped at the entrance of my cubicle, looking in. She glanced at my computer screen, at the stacks of paper, at the tiny plant I tried to keep alive on my desk. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the computers. "This is it," I confirmed. "Welcome to my office." She walked further in, her eyes wide as she scanned the rows of cubicles. The other accountants hunched over their desks, tapping away at keyboards. The drone of printers, the occasional muffled phone call, the overwhelming quiet of concentrated work. "It's gray," she said, almost to herself. "It is," I agreed. "And beige, very beige." She looked at my chair, my ergonomic keyboard. "Is this where you sit all day?" "Most of it," I said. "Sometimes I get up to stretch, or use the bathroom." She sat down on the small guest chair I had in my cubicle, the one usually reserved for clients who needed a quick meeting. She looked uncomfortable, like a bird trapped in a cage. "So what do you do?" she asked, her gaze fixed on my spreadsheet. "I analyze financial data," I explained patiently. "I reconcile accounts, prepare reports, advise clients on their taxes. That particular spreadsheet is a quarterly expense report for a trucking company." She blinked. Right. She clearly had no idea what I was talking about. The day passed slowly for her, I could tell. She tried to read a magazine she'd brought, but she kept looking up, watching me, watching the others. She went to the break room when I did, looking at the drab beige walls, the stained coffee machine. She ate a sad-looking sandwich from the vending machine because she hadn't packed her lunch. I offered her some of mine, but she declined, saying she wasn't hungry. She saw my interactions with Carol, with my boss, with other colleagues. She saw me calmly explain complex financial terms to a confused client over the phone. She saw me patiently fix a mistake someone else had made. She saw me skip lunch to finish a deadline. She saw me get called into my boss's office, looking stressed as he laid out more tasks. She saw the subtle ways I dealt with the daily grind, the quiet focus, the small acts of professionalism, the constant, unending flow of work. She saw the real me, the one who existed outside of our house, the one who powered our life. By mid-afternoon, she looked utterly bored and exhausted. She hadn't complained. Not once. She hadn't even looked angry. Just weary. Glamour of her intended trip seemed light years away from the reality of my office. She saw the fluorescent lights, the bland cubicles, the quiet dedication, the sheer relentless work that filled my days. She saw the lack of excitement, the absence of cabana boys and infinity pools. She saw the cost of her lifestyle, not in dollars, but in the hours of my life, the quiet effort I poured into this beige world. And for the first time, I think, she truly saw me. The second day, Sarah showed up again. This time she was wearing more comfortable clothes, jeans and a simple sweater. She brought a book, but I noticed she rarely opened it. Instead, she just walked. She moved from my cubicle to the small break room, occasionally walking to the window, staring out at the gray parking lot and the highway beyond. I could feel her eyes on me sometimes, a quiet, almost curious gaze. She wasn't judging or complaining. It was like she was trying to piece together a puzzle she'd never even known existed. The puzzle of my daily life. During lunch, I went to grab a sandwich from the deli downstairs. She followed me. As we ate, a few of my colleagues came over to say hello. Carol, my co-worker, was particularly friendly. Sarah, right? Tom's wife? Carol asked, smiling warmly. It's so nice to finally meet you. Tom talks about you all the time. Sarah's eyes flickered to me, a hint of surprise in them. He does? Oh, all the time, Carol chuckled. He's always going on about your garden, or that new kitchen you put in, or some fun trip you two went on. He's very proud of you. I felt a flush creep up my neck. I did talk about her. I talked about her to make my life seem more interesting, I guess. To pretend that the person I was working so hard for actually appreciated it. Or perhaps because deep down I still loved her and wished she would notice me. Sarah looked at me, a different kind of look this time. Something soft, something that looked almost like regret. Oh, she said quietly. I didn't know. Another colleague, Mark, a gruff but kind man, walked by. Tom, still slaving away, huh? He joked. Don't worry. The quarter closes soon. Then maybe you can finally take that vacation you've been saving for. Sarah's head snapped up. Vacation he's been saving for? She repeated, looking at Mark, then at me. Mark shrugged. Yeah, he's always talking about wanting to take you somewhere nice. A beach, I think he said. Said he'd been putting money aside for ages. Real dedicated, that Tom. I felt a chill. This was uncomfortable. This was exposing more than I had intended. But it was also true. I had been saving. Saving for a real trip, for us, not just for her and her friend. But my savings had dwindled with every must-have purchase, every essential renovation. Sarah didn't say anything. She just picked at her sandwich, her eyes distant. I could almost see the gears turning in her head. She was processing the version of me she had in her head. The quiet, slightly dull man who just paid the bills was colliding with the version her colleagues saw. The dedicated worker, the man who talked about his wife, the one saving for a dream trip for them. The rest of the day was quiet. She watched me work, but her gaze was more intense now, like she was truly seeing me for the first time. She watched me take calls, patiently dealing with demanding clients. She saw me meticulously go through receipts, trying to find a missing number, something that would balance the books. She saw the small, almost imperceptible signs of stress I carried, the way I rubbed my temples, the faint lines around my eyes, the stiffness in my shoulder. When I closed my computer for the day, she was still there, sitting in the guest chair, staring at the wall. "Time to go," I said. She nodded, stood up. Her movements were slow, almost heavy. On the bus ride home, she didn't look out the window. She just stared at her hands clasped in her lap. The silence wasn't angry anymore. It was thoughtful. "Wait." "So," she finally said, her voice soft. "Mark said you were saving for a trip. For us." I didn't look at her. "I was. For years. I wanted to take you to the Caribbean. A small, quiet island. Just us. I had a whole plan. Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "I tried," I said, turning to look at her. "I tried to talk about our finances. About saving. About what we wanted. But you were always busy planning the next thing with your friends. Or you'd laugh it off. Or tell me not to be a worrywart. You didn't want to hear about budgets or savings. You just wanted me to pay." She winced as if I had physically struck her. Her eyes filled with tears. But these weren't angry tears. These were tears of something else. Something I hadn't seen in a long time. Realization. Guilt. I didn't know," she repeated, her voice thick with emotion. "I really didn't know. I just thought you were always fine. I thought you just liked working. That you didn't mind." "No one just likes working, Sarah," I said, my voice weary. "I work to live. I work to provide. I work because I love you, and I want you to be happy. But I also need to be happy. I need to be seen. I need to be a partner, not just a provider." She looked away, out the window now, at the passing lights. The city was glowing, but the light in her eyes was dim. The unraveling was happening. The image she had of our life, of me, of herself, was slowly, painfully coming apart. And in its place a harsh, undeniable truth was emerging. A truth that was heartbreaking for both of us. The rest of the week followed a similar pattern. Sarah continued to come to my office every day. She still barely spoke, still mostly just watched. But the anger was completely gone, replaced day by day by a growing quietness, a visible weight on her shoulder. She started bringing her own lunch, a simple sandwich or salad, which she ate silently at the break room table, often alone. Her friends didn't call her, not Brenda, not Lisa, not Chloe. They had moved on from the drama, leaving her to face the consequences alone. By Friday, her face was drawn. She looked tired, not from physical exertion, but from the emotional toll of simply being in my world. She saw the deadlines, the stress, the endless grinding work. She saw the subtle slights from clients, the unreasonable demands from my boss. She saw my quiet patience, my dedication. She saw the man I was, the man I'd become, shaped by the very life she had taken for granted. When I turned off my computer that Friday afternoon, she slowly rose from her chair, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. It was a mix of sadness, understanding, and something that looked like immense regret. We rode the bus home in silence. It was a long, uncomfortable silence, but unlike before, it wasn't hostile. It was heavy, with unspoken words. When we got home, I expected her to retreat to the bedroom as she had done all week. Instead, she just stood in the living room, looking around at the beautiful, expensive house she'd created, the house I had paid for. She ran her hand over the polished granite countertop in the kitchen, a countertop that had cost me 3 months of my discretionary income. Then she turned to me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, not from anger, but from tears, She had clearly been holding back all day. Her voice was thin, fragile like spun glass. "Tom," she began, her voice barely a whisper. I am so sorry." My breath caught in my throat. This was it. The words I hadn't dared to hope for, but even as my heart squeezed, I remained guarded. Years of disappointment had taught me to be. "Sorry for what, Sarah?" I asked, my voice still flat. I needed her to spell it out. I needed her to truly understand. A fresh wave of tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. "Sorry for everything," she choked out. "For being so blind. So selfish, for not seeing you. For not seeing what you do for us. For not seeing how hard you work. For not seeing how much you've given up." She walked towards me slowly, hesitantly. "I saw it this week, Tom. I really saw it. Your office. It's not like anything I imagined. It's hard. It's boring. It's a grind. And you do it every single day. For us, for me." She looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. "I always just thought I don't know what I thought. That the money just appeared. That you loved your job. That you didn't mind. I never thought about what it cost you. Not just money, but time, energy. Your life." She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "And those things your colleagues said about you saving for a trip for us. I feel like such an idiot. A complete, total idiot. All this time I was dreaming of Maui with my friends, and you were dreaming of a quiet island with me, and I just trampled all over your dream, didn't I?" Her voice cracked on the last words, and she burst into a fresh wave of sobs. "I feel so ashamed. I've been so awful to you. So ungrateful. So self-involved." I stood there, listening, watching the tears stream down her face. It was genuine. The grief, the regret, the shame, it was all real. This wasn't a performance. This was the raw, broken truth. But even as her words pierced through the wall I'd built around my heart, the years of pain still held me back. I couldn't just forgive her instantly. The scars were too deep. "It's been years, Sarah," I said, my voice still rough. "Years of me trying to talk to you. Years of me feeling like a wallet, not a husband. Years of watching you prioritize your friends, your wants, your trips, over our shared life. Over my needs." She nodded, tears still flowing. I know you did. And I ignored you. I dismissed you. I was horrible. I don't know why I was like that. I don't know how I let myself become that person." "You didn't just become that person, Sarah," I said, my voice rising slightly. "You let yourself. You chose to be oblivious. You chose to ignore me. You chose to spend money we didn't have. You chose your friends over me, time and time again." The words were coming out now, the years of unspoken grievances flooding the room. I felt like I was screaming, but no one could hear me. I felt like I was drowning, and you just kept asking me to pay for more water. She flinched at my words, but she didn't deny them. She didn't get defensive. She just stood there, taking it all in, letting the truth wash over her. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely a sound. "You are right. You are completely right. And I hate myself for it. I really do." She took a shaky breath. Can we fix this, Tom? Can we even try? Because I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to lose you. I think I finally understand what I've lost." What I was about to lose, her gaze met mine, raw and vulnerable. My heart ached. The breaking had happened, and now the long, painful road of rebuilding would begin. If it could, I didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, there was a flicker of possibility. A fragile, tiny spark in the vast, heartbreaking ruins of our marriage. The immediate aftermath of Sarah's confession was a strange mix of relief, and continued pain. The relief came from her finally seeing, finally acknowledging. Pain came from the sheer depth of the damage we had done to each other, not just to our marriage. It felt like standing in the middle of a bombed-out city, trying to figure out where to even begin clearing the rubble. She started trying. Little things at first. She cooked dinner for me that night. Something simple, but clearly made with effort. She asked about my day, really asked and listened to my answers. She tidied up the house, not just for show, but truly cleaning. She even offered to do my laundry. These were things she rarely did, always having been more focused on her social life or leisure. The next day she called her friends. I overheard parts of the conversation. It was tense. She told Brenda, Lisa, and Chloe that she wasn't coming to the brunch they'd planned. She tried to explain what had happened, what she had realized. Brenda's voice, even through the phone, sounded incredulous. You are actually considering staying with him? After what he did? He's abusive, Sarah. He humiliated you. Sarah's voice was calm, though tinged with sadness. He didn't humiliate me, Brenda. He showed me the truth. He showed me how I've been living and how I've been treating him. And honestly, you guys didn't exactly stick around when things got difficult, did you? There was a stunned silence from Brenda's end. Then a quick defensive retort about how they were just trying to give her space. Sarah cut her off. Number, you were trying to get away from a situation that wasn't fun or free for you anymore. And I get it. Because that's how I've been with Tom for years, and I can't do that anymore. The phone call ended abruptly. I knew what it meant. Those friendships were over, or at least severely fractured. Sarah hadn't just lost a trip, she'd lost her entire support system, the one that had enabled her worst habits. It was heartbreaking to watch, even though I knew it was necessary. She was dismantling her old life brick by painful brick. Her family was another matter. Sarah's mom called, worried. Sarah, what is going on? Your father and I heard about the trip and Tom's behavior. Are you okay? He sounds like he's lost his mind. Sarah explained again, slowly, painstakingly. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She admitted her own fault, her own blindness. Her mom was quiet for a long time. Oh, honey, she finally said, her voice softer, tinged with concern. I guess I didn't see it either. I always just wanted you to be happy. I didn't realize maybe we enabled you too much. That admission from her mother was a huge step. A tiny crack in the foundation of Sarah's previous reality. The outside world, in its Reddit-like way, had its own opinions. Sarah sometimes scrolled through social media, and I could see the comments not about our specific story, but about similar situations. Stories of wives feeling abandoned, of husbands feeling used. The comments were often brutal, polarizing. Some condemned the husband's actions as cruel and unforgivable. Others praised him for making a stand. Sarah would read them, her face grim. It's like everyone thinks they know everything, she said one evening, looking at her phone, her eyes tired. But no one knows the whole story. No one knows what it's like inside someone else's marriage. No, I agreed. They just see the surface. They don't see the years of silent struggle, the ignored pleas, the slow erosion of a person. She sighed, putting her phone down. I wish I had seen it sooner. Before it got to this point. Me too, Sarah, I admitted. Me too. The social fallout, the loss of her friends, the awkwardness with family. It was all part of her reckoning. She wasn't the fun, carefree Sarah anymore. She was a woman facing the consequences of her past choices, trying to pick up the pieces. It was painful to witness, but it was also a sign of hope. She wasn't running away, she wasn't blaming me anymore. She was confronting her own reflection in the shattered mirror. The ultimate girls' trip, the one to Maui, had been a fantasy. The ultimate trip she was now on was a journey into herself, into the uncomfortable truth of her own actions. And she was navigating it with a surprising newfound strength. She was heartbroken, yes, but she was also, finally, taking responsibility. And that, in its own quiet way, was perhaps the most captivating and intriguing part of all. It was the beginning of rebuilding, not just our marriage, but her own understanding of what truly mattered. The decision to try and fix things wasn't a magic wand. There was no sudden burst of sunshine. It was more like digging through thick mud, painstakingly, day by day. We started with the hardest part, talking, really talking. We agreed to go to therapy. Our first session was awkward, tense. Sarah cried a lot. I was mostly silent, my arms crossed, watching her. The therapist, a kind but firm woman named Dr. Evans, encouraged us to speak, to air our grievances, but to listen. Truly listen. To each other. Sarah, to her credit, didn't hold back. She confessed her entitlement, her self-absorption, her casual disregard for my feelings and our finances. She spoke about the pressure she felt to keep up with her friends, to maintain a certain image. She talked about how easy it was to just let me handle everything, how she hadn't wanted to think about the numbers, the bills, the responsibilities. She admitted she had taken me for granted, that she had seen me as a provider rather than a partner. It was hard to hear, but it was also a relief. She was seeing it all. Then it was my turn. I spoke about feeling invisible, about the quiet desperation, the years of trying to communicate and being ignored. I talked about my resentment growing, festering, until I felt like I was drowning. I admitted that my action changing the trip was desperate, born of exhaustion and a feeling of having no other option. I explained that it wasn't meant purely as punishment, but as a last-ditch effort to make her see my reality, to shock her into awareness. Dr. Evans listened patiently. She then made us do exercises. One was simple but brutal. Each of us had to state 3 things we felt the other person had done that hurt us the most. And the other person could only listen, not interrupt, not defend, just listen. Then they had to repeat back what they heard. For me it was, "You made me feel like an ATM. You chose your friends over me, always. You never appreciated the sacrifices I made." For Sarah, it was, "You always withheld affection when you were angry. You made me feel like I was greedy for wanting nice things. You never really told me how bad it was until it was too late." Listening to her repeat my pain back to me, word for word, was gut-wrenching. And repeating her pain knowing I had caused it was just as hard. There was so much resentment, so much hurt, festering beneath the surface of our perfect-looking life. Outside of therapy, we started setting boundaries. We sat down with our budget, a real budget, together. For the first time, Sarah actively participated. She saw the numbers, she understood the cost of her past choices. We cut back on non-essentials. She even started looking for a part-time job to contribute more, something I hadn't even dared to suggest before. The atmosphere in the house changed. It was quieter, more subdued, but also more honest. The easy laughter was gone, replaced by careful conversations. We didn't jump back into intimacy. That felt too soon, too raw. It was like we were strangers, getting to know each other again, slowly, painstakingly, revealing our broken parts. She started doing small things for me, thoughtful things, not grand gestures, but genuine acts of kindness. She'd make my coffee in the morning. She'd ask about a difficult client I'd mentioned. She'd rub my shoulders when she saw me stressed. These small things, these tiny gestures of care, meant more than any expensive gift she'd ever bought herself. They showed she was seeing me, truly seeing me, as a person, not just a provider. I in turn tried to open up more, to not just bottle things up until I exploded. I tried to share my worries, my small joys, my daily frustrations. It was hard. Years of silence had built a wall around me. But she was listening now. Really listening. There were still arguments. Old habits die hard. Sometimes she'd slip back into a defensive tone, or I'd retreat into silence. But now we had tools. We could stop, take a breath, and apply what Dr. Evans taught us. We were learning to fight fair, to communicate our needs without tearing each other down. The process was slow. It was painful. It was a constant reminder of how much we had lost, how much time had been wasted, how deeply we had hurt each other. But there was also a fragile hope growing, a hope that maybe, just maybe from the ashes of the old broken marriage, something new and stronger could emerge. It wouldn't be the same marriage. It would be different. It would be different. It would be hard-won. And it would be built on the heartbreaking truth of what had happened, and the long, difficult journey of trying to make it right. The year that followed the Scranton trip was the hardest of our lives. It was a year of peeling back layers, of confronting uncomfortable truths, of facing the raw, exposed nerves of our relationship. The therapy sessions continued, becoming less about airing grievances and more about building new patterns of communication and respect. Sarah did get a part-time job, working in event planning for a local community center. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave her a sense of purpose and contribution that she hadn't had before. She managed her own small budget, paid her share of household expenses, and started to understand the value of a dollar earned through honest work. She even found a quiet satisfaction in it, a sense of independence she hadn't realized she was missing. Her friendships with Brenda, Lisa, and Chloe slowly withered away. There were a few half-hearted attempts to reconnect, mostly from them trying to gauge if the old Sarah was back, the one who funded their fun. But Sarah didn't engage. She found new connections, people who valued her for who she was, not for what she could provide. She started volunteering, found a book club, and even took up hiking. She was building a life for herself, not just a life for others to admire. Our physical intimacy slowly returned, tentative at first, then more deeply connected. It was different now. There was a vulnerability there, a tenderness that had been missing before. We weren't just going through the motions, we were truly present with each other, acknowledging the pain we'd caused, but also reaching for the comfort and connection we desperately needed. The scars, though, remained. We talked about it often. "Do you think we'll ever truly get past this?" she asked one evening, her head on my chest. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't think we ever get past it. I think we just learn to live with the scars. They remind us of what happened, of what we almost lost. They make us stronger, or at least more careful." We never went to Hawaii. We never took that big, expensive trip. Instead, a year and a half after the Scranton incident, we saved up for a small, quiet vacation. It was a cabin in the mountains, just a few hours' drive away. No infinity pools, no cabana boys, just quiet trails, a small lake, and each other. It was humble, but it was ours. We planned it together, budgeted for it together, and enjoyed it together. We talked, we laughed, we sat in comfortable silence. We cooked simple meals and read books. It was the trip I had always wanted, a trip for us. And for the first time I felt truly seen, truly valued. The heartbreaking part of our story wasn't just the moment I revealed the bus tickets. It was the long, arduous journey that followed, the breaking of the old, unhealthy patterns, the pain of confronting our flaws, quiet grief for the years we'd wasted, the dreams we'd let fade, the heartbreak of realizing how close we had come to losing everything. We are still together, but our marriage is not the same. It's not a fairy tale. It's a testament to resilience, to hard work, to the painful but necessary act of tearing down what was broken to build something new. There are still days when the old resentments threaten to resurface, when the fear of repeating past mistakes creeps in. Now, we have the tools to face them, to talk, to listen, to choose each other, even when it's hard. The ultimate girls' trip, the one to Maui, never happened. But the ultimate trip of self-discovery, of painful reckoning, and of slow, deliberate rebuilding happened. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy. But it led us to a place of greater honesty, deeper understanding, and a more profound, if fragile, love. It was a long way from the beige cubicles of Scranton, but the lessons learned there were the most valuable trip we ever took.